Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Tommy D. Duncan III, otherwise known as TD3. It is March the 11th, 2026, and if it is Wednesday night, it is definitely Black Men Speak. We want to welcome everyone today. We're going to have two of our very special guests that we have seen throughout the years who are going to talk to us today about the real estate market and what is happening. Terrell Richard and, of course, Dwight Johnson, who we usually have once a quarter. And it's been a little while since we've had them on, so we figure let's go ahead and bring them back and talk about what's going on and then make sure that you become the smartest person on real estate in the market. So I want to go ahead and get this show started and thank everyone who is joining us, and then we will get this party started. So with that being said, we want to welcome our good friends, Dwight Johnson and Terrell Richard. How you doing, gentlemen?
Doing well.
Doing fine, doing fine. It's great to be back on Black Men Speak.
All right, and of course, we do have one person that's missing. Actually, JR called yesterday and has a pretty bad cold. Hopefully, it is not a flu, and said he is a little bit off the radar, trying to get him back up to 100%. So hopefully, he will be back next week. So, of course, make sure that you're in your prayers for him so he will get back to 100%, and we look forward to seeing him next week. But without that being said, let's go ahead and get started with this show. I'm pretty sure everybody who's watching this show does know who these gentlemen are, but just in case we have someone who is a first-time guest, we'll have each of these two very accomplished gentlemen to introduce themselves very briefly, just in case, and then we will move forward with the show.
All right. Once again, this is Dwight Johnson. I run the D1 Realty team, powered by Keller Williams Houston Memorial. Serve all things residential real estate in the Houston area, and started to branch out a little bit, working on a few things in Dallas and Austin these days as well.
Okay, and I'm Terrell Richard. I'm branch manager with Efinity Mortgage, locations in Arlington and West Plano.
All righty, and Terrell is about money, simply put. And for what it's worth, I just got it closed. This year, our real estate portfolio, of course, bends over backwards to make sure that you're getting the right deal. So I want to thank him for that publicly. Everyone knows that these guys are the real deal. So since we've had Dwight and Terrell on, a little bit and nothing, and then a lot has happened, and we're going to do a start off by talking about a little bit about what happened in the fourth quarter last year, kind of closing out the holiday season, and what we've seen thus far in the first quarter this year, and then we will get to what we're looking at in the future. And folks, while we are on the show, I want to make sure that for those of you who are watching right now, bring your real estate questions. Get on the chat line, log in, let us know if you have any specific questions that you would like to ask, and make sure you put that in the chat line. I want to acknowledge Be For Real Girl, good evening, and I believe that is cousin Audrey K, who is on the line. So let's go ahead. I will yield the floor first to Dwight, and then Terrell, just to kind of give us the rear view mirror of what they've seen and what they've been doing, and then we'll look forward.
Yeah. So quarter four is always a time frame that I look forward to in my personal business. What I've learned in that business is always a time where you gain market share. A lot of people either have thrown in the towel and said, hey, it's over, we're not going to do it, or maybe they've potentially hit all their goals and they're in that vacation space. So my team and I, we typically double down in the Q4, touching base with our clients to try to close the gap on a lot of folks. And it also helps to set the stage to get us out of the box early. So we finished the year numbers wise, kind of above average where we'd like to be. The sizes were down, but we still were able to help a lot of people this year. Last year, ended up helping about 38 real estate families do deals last year, and a big portion of that was in Q4.
Nice. Yeah, and it's kind of, we do the same kind of push. Q4 is when we like to do our push as well too. We're trying to make sure we're hitting our goals, helping the families out. What I kind of noticed was it seemed like value did maybe slip a little bit. So maybe they've gone down just a bit. So maybe a little bit more affordable for a lot more people out there. Also, it was what I noticed, and Dwight could probably comment on it a little bit more. But I noticed we were in what's called a buyer's market, which means that the buyer has the advantage. The buyer usually can ask for more things from the seller, and it's starting maybe to cool off a little bit from that to what I'm noticing in this Q1. But Q4 was definitely a huge buyer's market, and we took advantage of it.
Yep. So anytime we get that inventory around days on market, 4 months or more, 4 to 6, it really favors the buyers and some golden opportunities. We made some very good deals for some folks last year based on the market. So you always want to partner with folks that are, particular with the market of the moment and can adjust with the market. So definitely made some good strides and had some folks get into some really strong equity positions to close out the year.
So when we look at the level of activity that each of you guys have been seeing, I know, of course, typically when it comes to real estate, we always talk about interest rates, that folks have been waiting to drop down. Of course, we know there's been a lot of politicization of the Fed chairman, and of course, Trump's, let's say, pending pick for Fed chair, and what that may mean for interest rates. Of course, in 2025, he was beating his drums as loud as he could to get the interest rates down. And there were a couple of cuts. I mean, nothing drastic, but to help kind of cool down the markets. Tell us a little bit about what you anticipate will happen this year, what impact you believe that Trump's selection for Fed chair will have on real estate, and how that impacts either of what you two do.
I'm gonna start that one out, Joe. You want me to grab that?
I can go ahead and start it out. I am anticipating that rates are going to go just a tad bit down, not anything drastic. We're right now in the high fives right now, so I'm anticipating that we may get down to the mid fives. It has allowed for a little bit more activity, not with just purchases, but also with refinances. Now his pick, I think it's going to, I don't mind his pick. I think he'll be fine, but I think that it's going to determine it depends on what's going to happen with the market. What's going around him. I don't think he's going to, do anything drastic to affect it, but I think he's going to play nicely into it and make sure that we do have some cuts and bring the mortgages rate down a little bit, because I believe Trump definitely wants them down.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, and it's looking like it's going to be Kevin Warsh, who's hasn't been, been somewhat conservative over the past, but I feel like there's probably some agreements in place that he'll be able to do that just so simply so he can take credit for the type of moves. But
Yes.
I was in a seminar recently, and as much as Trump might can puppet strings 1 or 2 people, it's still, a 12-member board, and so no one person is going to be able to come in and run rogue and do what they want, or even do what he wants for that matter. So, but all the prognosticators are suggesting maybe at least 2 quarter-point cuts this year. And but the thing that we focus on, we're right at the low 6s, high 5s now. That's a pretty normalized rate, and I think I don't want to say sentiment is settled in, but I think after so long, we got north of 7 at some point in time early last year, and this high 5, low 6 is not a bad place to be in terms of a balanced market, and it's much cheaper than it's been in decades and years in the past. That's not a bad place to be, and we can still make good deals happen in those rates. So I think people are kind of coming to the realization that this is the new norm.
What is a balanced market for those of us out there who may not be familiar with that term?
Balanced is when when the folks like Darrell and I shine, where you actually have to know your job and do your job and understand contracts and actually negotiate deals. So typically, if there's enough inventory, 3 to 4 months or less, might favor, kind of might be looked at the sellers. 3 to 4 is balance, and when you start getting way more than that, the buyers are in control because there's so many houses sitting there that they can kind of cherry pick and things like that. So balance Dallas market is, like 3 months of inventory or so at any given time, 3 or 4 months of inventory. And when you say inventory, if you could think of it, if no more houses came on the market, which that never happens, how long would it take to liquidate all the homes on the market? So if we got a 3 or 4 month supply, that's sort of balanced.
You bring up a good point when it comes to building, and one of the conversations that we've had over the last couple of years is a very low inventory on housing that in particular has affected a lot of our younger buyers. One of the things that we've talked about is the affordability of housing. Inventory has something to do with that. Interest rates, which has an impact on affordability, has something to do with that. I haven't looked at the numbers recently. I want to say the average house in the U.S. maybe costs somewhere in the 300Ks, but for a lot of our younger people, that is out of their range. So let's talk about this. I guess the influencing factors on activity, interest rates, inventory, that means property being on the market for a period of time, and what other factors are there out there that impact you all's level of activity and or it being a hot market versus kind of a lukewarm? Because I mean, it feels to me, even though there's more activity, it still seems to me like it's somewhat of a lukewarm market.
Yeah.
Overall,
Those are the big ones, interest rates and inventory. But this unemployment rate is affecting thing. Jobs, the number of jobs, the length of time that the average person is unemployed these days. I heard that's up to 27 weeks now. So if someone's out of work, regardless of whatever, they can't afford to buy. And even if they get back into the job market after 3 or 4 or 5 months, now you're playing catch up for another 3 or 4 or 5 months. So just the job and the labor market, and that there's a direct correlation between the labor market and the interest rates as well. But interest rates, inventory, employment or unemployment certainly factor that. And like I said, employment, if someone's moving to take a job or being forced to get back into the office or something like that, they may have been able to live with someone remotely and now they need to live in their market area or something like that. So I would say, in addition to those two, I would say employment and unemployment.
I'll probably add to that. Maybe inflation has some kind of factor with that, because when you buy a house, you have to have money, and if you're not able to keep saving money to where you can buy a house, that's a little bit tougher on people that being able to buy a home. But it's been I've seen a steady number of people, and what's been a big revelation to me. I'm been getting a lot of clients that had dropped out of the market call me back just out of the blue, and just introduce their they're ready to start looking again. So I'm very optimistic about what's about to happen, and looking forward to 2026.
got a question coming from our chat line, Miss Marion Square. She is stating that there's a lot of homes on the market, bankruptcies up, people losing jobs, inventory up. Looks like 2006 to 2008 again. That's a question mark. Foreclosures also up. What are you guys seeing? Says again, a lot of homes on the market, bankruptcies, people losing jobs. That's definitely a fact. Inventories are up, foreclosures are up.
I've started to experience a little. Probably the last 2 or 3 calls we were on, I was of the mindset that we weren't going to have a lot of that, just simply because people have a lot of equity. So I think there's a lot more than normal. But from a personal perspective, this is more of the Terrell's area, that seeing those mortgages getting called back or getting short saled or deed into a foreclosure. But I think we're starting to see them, but I don't feel like it'll get back to 2008, 2000, 2009 levels, because I think the underwriting requirements are much more strict and people are having to put more skin in the game. There's very little, no interest, no down payment type stuff floating around. So if you're going in with day one equity, unless you've overpaid in the pandemic times or something like that, most people are sitting on equity. And even if they get into some type of trouble with regard to unemployment, there's a parachute. They can kind of bail out without necessarily getting as far as foreclosure. In fact, I'm dealing with one like that today. Someone called me and they need to do something. They didn't make some tough decisions, but they're sitting on a little bit of equity.
Yeah, and I am seeing that there are a little bit more foreclosures and short sales. A short sale is almost like a foreclosure to me. You know, in terms of it can, while it hurts the people that are going through it, it can actually help some people who are buying homes, because when you have a lot of foreclosures and short sales, the values of homes are going to drop. So it's not going to help the sellers, but it would help the buyers a little bit. Not saying that we want that, but no, I don't see it going to the 2008 levels either. Uh, as what Brother Dwight said so eloquently, they put a lot of things in place to make sure that we had tougher underwriting rules. It was a lot easier for me to get a client approved back in 2007, 2008, around there. I had so many different products that I can get them approved, and now we have a lot more strict ways of looking at clients because we're protecting them from themselves.
Gotcha. Want to welcome Brother Frederick V. Roberts out of Prairie View, Texas, who is on the line. Also, Miss Tanya Hall out of Dallas Fort Worth. And of course, we want to welcome everybody to the show. Any real estate questions that you have, make sure that you put them in the chat line so that we can make sure that we get your questions answered. And we, of course, have been talking about the real estate market. We've talked a little bit about interest rates, the balancing of the market. One of the other things that I was kind of curious about is that you had mentioned earlier, Terrell, about a lot of folks that are still holding on to those low interest rate loans, those 2 and 3% loans, and not very much incentive, with the rates being 5, 6%, for them selling, even if they may need to. Explain to our audience how or when does it make sense to actually look at number one, refi, not for someone who has a 2 or 3% to a 5 or 6%, but just in general, what are the numbers if you're looking at refi as we anticipate interest rates that may go down a little bit this year? And then also, when does it get to a point where those folks with 2 and 3% actually might start loosening up and selling their homes?
Okay, so I will, just to answer that question, right now it's actually softening up. Right now, we're getting more people with 2-3% that are looking, because it can make sense to refinance from a 2% or 3% to a 5 or 6% interest rate, home. And I've done that several times. It's about what do you have out there? You might have 28, 30% interest rate credit cards. There's a lot of things we can do to make it work for you. It's all about need. You may need more space. You may need to fix your house up. You have kids that are, you have maybe parents that may need to move in with you. So, it's about where you're at in life when you make that decision. If you have some parents that have some health issues and need to come move with you, and you have to get some things ready, you're gonna maybe do a cash out loan to get some things fixed up. If you have a lot of high interest rate credit cards and they're really hurting your bottom line, you're gonna look into refinancing, see if you can put that into your house, and also thinking about that has a longer term. We can go up to 30 years, so it makes your payment a lot lower, and it gives you some breathing room. So it just depends on where you are at life, if it makes sense.
So that sounds more like a debt consolidation strategy, or am I getting
Correct.
that wrong? Okay.
Correct.
Gotcha.
100%. Yeah, you're not gonna refinance. You're not gonna refinance that without putting some debts in that, or some home improvements. If you're at 2%, you're gonna leave that alone. But if you need some major home improvements, if your house is falling down, or it needs a lot, you're gonna have to do it. Or you can leave it alone and do a second mortgage, which is called a home equity loan, or a HELoan, or HELOC. You can do one of those and not touch your interest rate on your first, but use the equity you have to take some money out to consolidate.
And we know that some of our longer term listeners know what a HELOC is, because we have some of the smartest listeners
Okay.
in the market because of you guys. But
Yeah.
for those who may be watching this show for the first time, kind of explain to them, generally speaking, you don't have to go into deep detail,
Okay.
what a HELOC does for you and when that makes sense.
Okay, HELOC or HELoan One is, a HELOC is it's an adjustable. It usually has an adjustable rate. It's used like a credit card, basically. It's called a home equity line of credit. You're taking a second out on your home, and what people are doing, they're using that equity in their house to either fix up the house. They're using that equity to send kids to college. They're using that equity to pay off high interest rate credit cards or cars or things like that.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some requirements though for getting that HELOC or that HE loan. What do you need to make sure that you have for either of those?
Well, you're going to need a higher credit score than just a regular loan, because it's a second mortgage. So a second mortgage by nature is it's a riskier for the banks, but you're also going to have equity. That's the most important thing. You need to have equity. That means if your house is worth $400,000 and you only owe $200,000, you have 50% equity in your house. In Texas, we can go up to 80%. Use 80% of your equity in terms of doing a cash out refinance. So we're not going to be able to go to 81, 82, 83, or 4, 85. We can only go to 80%. So you do need equity in there. I do have clients that will come to me thinking they have equity, but they're at 80% and they're not ready yet. You have to, pay on it a little bit more and hope the value goes up a little bit more, and wait till you're, at least at, 60%, 70%, something around there, where we can, do some fixes and with your home or your credit.
Right. Yeah. Big part of it is reframing the thinking. Sometimes, so people get so bent on, I got such a good rate, I'm not going to touch it. You got to look at the totality of your situation. Right. I referred a frat brother not too long ago. He called me asking about a home equity type of situation. And he came back after a couple of weeks and said, man, thanks for referring me to your person, but there's no way I'm going to do that, because they want me to go from this payment to this payment. And, I didn't have any skin in the fight or, in that deal for me. But I just challenged his thinking. I said, okay, if you're going to take this much out and your new mortgage payment is going to be X, and let's just say it was $500 more. But in order to do that deal, just like Brother Terrell said, he had to pay off this debt completely, this one completely, this one completely. And I just said, all I'll challenge you to do is look at your total payment at the end of the day. So as it relates to rate or it relates to new property, his payment, once he got the new loan, his mortgage payment maybe went up $500 or $600, but his overall monthly obligations probably went down by $1,000. And it literally, this is a very smart guy, but it just helped someone to reframe his thinking. He was like, yeah, that's really all I was after at the end of the day. But he was just so bent on my payments going up, or most people will get so bent on my interest rate is going up. So we have to reframe the thinking. Look at your bottom line as opposed to that one variable. So we lose a lot of people that get caught up on that one variable. Right. I'm not getting rid of this 2% interest rate. It's 3%.
Correct.
Well, would saving a $700-800 a month, would that help or hurt you? Well, it'll help. Well, this is how you do it.
Yeah, I try to say when they tell me that, I'm like, what is that 2% doing for you versus what this 6% is going to do for you? So they get off that, they're like, yeah, you're right. 2% is why I'm here. It's not helping me out, but this is what we can do to get you in a better position.
So otherwise, you're asking them to zoom out.
Exactly.
Yeah, correct.
There you go.
Yeah, look at the bigger picture. Gotcha.
That's right.
Got another comment from Miss Marion. Says a lot of homes over the last few years sold way above market value. I would suspect a lot of these are going to go upside down. I don't know how they can refinance for those folks who bought above market. Thoughts?
Well, I don't know if everybody remembers that happened in the 2008 when. When we had to recorrect the market. So a lot of the houses were, less value than what they bought them for. The government came out with a program then. I believe Obama was in then. I'm pretty sure. But they came out with the Home Affordable Refinance Program, which we called HARP. And what HARP did, HARP allowed us to refinance clients without caring about what the value was. So, if we didn't even do appraisals on them, we knew what the house appraised for. What it would appraise for, but we didn't need appraisals. We were just told to refinance everybody to get them out of those situations. So if we're in a situation like that, I'm sure they're going to come up with something like that again to make sure that the people who are upside down are still able to take advantage of the better interest rates.
Yeah. And in Texas, we had some overpayment, but not drastic like you had in other parts.
Oh yeah, we're always better.
So our inventory stayed stable. Even like I said, you may have been overpaying by 5 or 10, not 30 or 40, where you could really get caught in that upside down movement. So certainly some of it, probably not as many here in Texas as there are elsewhere.
Correct.
Gotcha. It said option DSCR is an option. Does that ring a bell? I says option DSCR.
Well, DSCR, that's actually one that you're going to use just for rental properties. You don't have them for owner occupied properties right now. All the DSCR just means is that we're basing everything not on the value of the house, we're basing it on what the house can rent out for. So if your house can rent out for $2,000 a month, we're going to make sure that your payment on the new refinance or on the new purchase of that, and it can be a refinance on that as well, is not over $2,000. We want it, dollar for dollar, or we want the part where people are going to rent it out is more than what your payment is.
Mm-hmm. So if I understand, it's not my area, but the property is qualifying for the mortgage.
Correct. Property is,
yeah. The client. The property itself is supporting the decision to make the loan.
Yeah, we have the realtor not only do the appraisal, but the realtor also looks in the area and see what people are renting the houses out for. So he sends us a list of like 6 different places that are renting in that area and show what they're renting out for, and he gives us what's called a rent schedule. And he says this is good to rent for $1,995, and we keep that payment there. So you may have to put more money down, in order to get to that mark. So, but we don't look at your income at all.
All right, good deal. Another thing in the market, and this is kind of going back, one of the major stories that I saw not too long ago about this push from the current administration that allegedly is going to, I don't want to say ban, but push back against large institutional investors buying so many single family homes, kind of crowding out individuals and or families from buying homes and or driving up the price of the market. I know this is something that we've talked about over the last year or so as well, where you have a lot of institutional buyers who are basically pricing out the individual buyers, number one, and or reducing the inventory. I know, Dwight, I think you mentioned this earlier, that they are buying a lot of properties, not for people to live in, but for single family homes for people just to rent, and they weren't making them available to buy.
Right. Yep. So I was multitasking here. Just another point I know I'm going to come to, but I'll make sure I understand your question. You were talking about institutional buyers.
Right.
Yeah, we did have it. So that's one of the things they're trying to regulate to prevent that happening, because that was certainly affecting first-time buyers' ability because they're buying those type of entry-level price point homes that a first-time buyer could have afforded. Those were being scooped up by your large institutional investors. So they're definitely trying to prevent so much of that, so that the market is available for anyone that wants to get in it in the affordable space. Yeah.
Any thoughts on that, Terrell?
Yeah, I mean, it does help out. Like you said, the younger generation, the first-time home buyers, they're not going to have as much money to compete with them. Also, if they allow the institutional investors to buy these homes up, when they're ready to put it back out there, it's going to be more expensive. They're not putting it back out there cheap, so they're going to drive the prices up. So, yes, I believe I've heard this administration does want to do something about it. And we definitely need that. We don't need so many people out there with all the money buying the properties and then resetting the market, by putting them out there, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 higher than what they bought it, or renting it out to where the payment will be higher than what you could have bought it for.
Gotcha. And I'm going to, even though I don't know that she is listening tonight, but I know that my cousin who lives in Temple, not too far from Austin, has always been screaming about the affordability of buying homes. She's in her 30s, mid 30s. And of course, you have folks in their mid 20s and or mid 30s who have been screaming that based upon their earnings, with some exceptions, with the high income brackets, that buying a house is just getting too expensive now for their generation compared to, let's say, our generation or some of the earlier generations. What are you seeing there? And is that a real thing still?
I think a lot of that is consumer sentiment. I don't know if I can pull the slide up, but at the convention, they talked about, I think the way they defined that years ago, people were spending almost 49% of their overall income for the cost of the house and interest. And now it's a much lower percentage, but sentiment, there's too much social content and there's too much glamorization. And it feels like it. So the sentiment is that it's costing more. It's really not costing, per percentage of your income is not any more than it's been a lot worse in years past, where the majority of your up to 49% of your income was going into the cost of your house. And where now I think it's more like maybe 30% of your income is the cost of owning the house. So it's actually not more, it's not less affordable. Perception is reality. That's what people believe, and that's how they move and act, because that's what they believe.
Correct. And I'll add to that too is what's a big factor in that is location. There's a lot of people that say, oh, it's too affordable, but then you have to move a little bit further out. You're not going to be able to stay in the just in our area. You're not going to be able to be in Plano, but if you go a little bit further out to different areas, Melissa, different places like that, it gets cheaper. I'll on the books right now, I have some ones that are going high, but I also have a $150,000 house, and this is in Marshall, Texas. I have a $180,000 listing in Fort Worth, and I have a $225,000. So they're there, but you're going to have to change your mindset of what you want in that house. With somebody like Dwight, here's what I tell my clients: if your budget is a certain payment, I'm going to tell you that payment is a $230,000 house. I'm going to tell you to tell your realtor, show me $230,000 houses. Let's not go out there for $300,000 houses. But what happens is a lot of clients go look at the much nicer houses, and then they want to pay that lower price, and so they're not going to be happy. They're going to so you need to stay in your lane. You need to make sure that you're looking at in the neighborhoods that are going to bring the price that you're going to be happy to pay.
Yeah, and that is definitely sentiment. Like,
yes,
they want
correct.
this house inside Loop 610 in Houston. Not going to happen. That doesn't mean it can't be. So the perception is, I can't afford anything. No, you can't afford anything where you want to be. You
Correct.
can afford something. So it's just you have to align your realistic. Be realistic. And I do that all the time. I'm like, hey, if this is what you want, if you want something less than 5 years old and under this price, well, you're not going to get that in the city. You're going to have to go way out to get that. Doable, but you're going to have to be out in the county. You're going to have a commute.
Yeah, location.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question on the chat line. I'm not sure that I'm clear on it. It says, if in a home over X amount of the year, what amount of year would make you a first-time buyer? And I don't know that I exactly understand the question. This is coming from Mary.
What makes you a first-time buyer in Texas is if you haven't owned a home in the last 3 years.
3 years.
So you have to have 3 years where you don't own a house, and we call you a first-time home buyer. The reason that is important is because there's a lot of programs out there, a lot of government programs that will pay for your down payment. Not the 20% part, but they'll pay up to 5%, and they'll pay for your down payment if you're considered a first-time home buyer. There are also some programs if you're not a first-time home buyer, but those are higher interest rate if you need to borrow money. I mean, if you need that money, and it's money that you're given, money that will be forgiven. You don't have to pay it back. It's usually you have to live there 3 or 5 years, but it's just an investment the city is making to help bring more buyers in their area.
So just so we are clear, for those who maybe haven't been in the market before, how much traditional loan are you required to put down as a deposit? And with a first-time home buyer program, what does that look like?
So it depends on your program. So
Okay.
there's several programs. So let's say if you're military and you're VA, most VAs qualify for 100%.
Okay.
Now I got to look at your entitlement and everything like that, but most of them don't have to put anything down. It's it's 100% financing. Also, there's another loan called USDA, which is basically the A is agriculture. So it's in underdeveloped places, cities. It's not going to be like a Dallas or Houston. It's going to be a little bit more out. It would be like in a Melissa or some locations like that. USDA, I have to put the address in on a website they have. If it's approved for there, that's a 0% down program as well. That's they finance 100%. Next in line would be conventional. First-time home buyers doing conventional can put as little as 3% down. So we do have that 3% down. FHA is 3.5% down. But if it was HUD owned only has if you find a HUD owned FHA, you can put $100 down. They have what's called $100 down HUD FHA.
That is some pretty wide-eyed stuff for those who may not be aware of that. So for those of us who are out there, make sure that you're sharing this information with folks who might need it, because there are probably a lot of people who are not aware of these programs. But to your point.
Yeah, and I'll just say this. I have 3 first-time home buyers that not only are they not paying a down payment because it's a buyer's market, the seller's paying their closing costs. They're going to walk away from the closing collecting their earnest money back. So they're going to pay nothing for the purchase, and it's because we were able to couple a first down home buyer loan with down payment assistance loan with a seller that was wanting to get out the house and able to give them some money to pay for the closing costs.
So let's say that you've had a home and you've paid it off. And what you're saying is if you paid that home off within 3 years, you are eligible to be a first-time home buyer?
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
You cannot have owned a home in the last 3 years.
Oh, okay.
So if you paid it off, you still own it. So, but I have people who have owned homes and they sell their house. They sell their house, and then 3 years later, they're first-time home buyers. But as I mentioned, even if you're just having, you need that down payment, I can still find you money. Even if you own a home, I can still find you that money for buying a house you're going to live in. But they offer it at a higher interest rate than what they would do for somebody who's truly a first-time home buyer.
Question: do realtors help with this? And I guess this is Miss Marion asking about these different programs. Or, obviously a money guy like Terrell is going to help with this. Do realtors help with this is the question.
Yeah, you missed a couple and before her, and I'll try to go back and address. She had 2 or 3 leading up to that one.
Yes, she did.
But one thing I do want to make sure we save a little bit of time to touch on, because I think this happened around the end of last year that's relevant to our audience. The homestead cap, there was some legislation that passed at the end of last year that's positive. So the homestead cap, 2 components of it, it went up from 100 to 140,000. I think
it did.
The senior deal went up from maybe 160.
I think it may have gone up closer to 200,000.
For over 65.
Over 65.
And then what's really relevant for a group like your audience, they put a 20% cap on non-homestead property. So what was going crazy was a lot of the investors were their appraisals were going up so high because they're not homesteaded, which was driving their payments up, which was driving rent up. So now they put a 20% cap on that. So I think more investors are okay with upwards of a 20% cap. So I think so those were 2 things that happened with that legislation last November, which was proactive. So those are big things. But yeah, I think she is asking about if a house is lost, maybe through foreclosure or short sale, how might the how might the bank or the REO company price it? It's going to vary. In many cases, they're just trying to recoup their money. In some cases, if they recoup more, they may owe the difference back to the seller. But it really just depends on their inventory and things like that. Sometimes and the time of the year. Sometimes you may see them, willing to take a big loss on their books if it's closer to the end of the year or the end of a fiscal year or something like that. So, but in most cases, they'll have it listed with someone, and they're gonna try to get close to market value. They're not giving those homes away. And
Not
so,
anymore.
yeah. So if she wants to jump on and articulate on what do the realtors help with, I think you just heard what an expert is, Terrell is. I mean, I learned right then on all those programs. My typical response would have been 3.5% down and 3.5% off. And that was the second to the highest thing he spoke about. So when you're partnering with people like him and myself, we're definitely going to help. We're definitely going to be a resource. But if you want to clarify your question that we could speak specifically to, I'm not sure what you're asking, what we help with.
All right. We have about maybe 15 minutes left in the show, and you said you wanted to kind of make sure that we carve out some time for a couple of different things, Dwight. So just want to make sure that we kind of bear that in mind. If there are any other questions that are coming from the chat line, make sure that you get those within the next couple of minutes. So that we can ensure that we get those questions addressed. And no, Maren, these are all good questions. You don't have to give us a break because these are questions that maybe other people have thought about, just aren't asking, or just for whatever reason didn't ask. So no, thank you for all of the questions. So let's go ahead and kind of talk about what your thoughts are for the last 3 quarters of 2026. There's a lot that can happen. Obviously, we know that. Given what's been going on thus far just this year. So what are your thoughts as to what you see in 2026? And then I want to carve out a couple of minutes to talk to our 20 and 30-year-old non-homeowners who've never owned a home, who are worried, afraid, or they've been hearing what's going on in the market. They just can't afford a home. And what percent, this came up earlier, of your take-home income should your home or your mortgage expenses be?
That's real. Got some minimums and maximums, I think.
Yes, we do have. Well, to me, it's not like how they tell you when you're gonna get married and they say that you're supposed to use 8 months of this to buy the ring. I say what you're comfortable with. There are going to be some, we do have some factors we can hit. With FHA, believe it or not, we can go all the way up to 56.99% of your gross income can be what's called your back-end ratio. Back-end ratio is your home. Home is considered what's called a front-end ratio, but your home plus all the bills that you pay that are on your credit report. So we're going to include tax insurance in there. We're also going to include your car. We're going to include if you own, if you got credit cards, anything that's on your credit report. We're going to add those up, and you can go with FHA all the way up to 56.99%. With conventional, you can't be any higher than 49.99%. So basically half of your income. The other programs I mentioned, USDA is going to be a lot lower. It's going to be down to about 44% back end ratio, but they also have a front end max ratio. They have also 31%. So in front end ratio, as I mentioned, is going to be your house alone. What's your house versus your income? So those are the factors. And VA doesn't even go off of ratios at all. VA, I've had somebody approved at 86%. VA is about what your residual income is. Residual income is what you have left over after you pay all your bills. So VA concentrates on that. They don't concentrate more on the debt ratio.
Gotcha. What are other recommendations that you would make to folks who have never owned a home before, maybe never been in a family where they owned a home? What do they need to be doing now based upon where we're at in the market, obviously, other than save money?
The number one thing is to have a conversation with either a realtor and or a lender, just to create a plan. Because I feel like I've never met a client that I can't help get a home. May not be right now, but if that's
Correct.
a goal, make a goal, change the mindset first, create a goal, get with the professional to help you choreograph a plan. And that could be there's something in there about credit. That could be credit repair. That could be getting concessions. That could be learning about a program. So the main thing is to, speak it in the atmosphere. I'm looking ahead at a vision board. This is my first time ever doing a vision board. I've always kind of had resolutions and things like that, but create a vision, put it on paper, get some like-minded individuals involved with you, and true professionals that can help you, draft a plan and carry out a plan.
Yeah.
So those would be my first things. I think anyone can own. If you can rent, you can own. That's my firm belief.
And I'm a big believer everybody should own. There's some big reasons because of that. When I get that client that doesn't want to own, when they tell me that, here's how I want to open their eyes. I just let them know that, okay, if you think a mortgage payment is high, let me ask you, what is your rent going to be in 30 years? Do you think rent's going to stay down, or rent goes up? So when you buy a home, you're really locking down, this is the max I'm going to pay. Now there can be some, it can go a little higher based on if tax or insurance go up, but for the most part, it's going to stay right at that level. And then 30 years from now, if you make all your payments on time and you don't go ahead, you're going to be paid off. And now and that's when you're older, and that's when you need to be paid off. You're going to have a lot of equity. You're going to have a house that you bought at $200,000. 30 years from now, a $200,000 house may be worth, I'd say, $600,000-$700,000 at least. So now you have all that equity built up. You don't have that mortgage payment. But if you rented a house if you rent an apartment for $2,500 today, what do you think that payment's going to look like in 30 years? The rent is definitely not going to go down. So I think everybody needs to look to buying a house to protect themselves from the future.
Got another question here from Ms. Tanya. Says, what do you think about buying cheap homes from federal auctions at the courthouse for foreclosed or repossessed homes? Is that a cheaper way to find good rates on some homes? Also, are they able to go and bid at these types of auctions for a potential client looking to get a home for little or nothing and possibly have to flip or rehab it?
My experience over the last couple of years has been no. I haven't been to an auction personally in a couple of years, but when I was going, it felt like to me they weren't going for any better than what was happening in the market. I think there was a time when you could go to the first Tuesday of the month and kind of get a deal if you were poised and had the money, and you're not going to be able to do financing and things like that in that situation. But if you had the capital, there was a time in the past where you could get deals. Again, I haven't been in the last probably 24 months, but the last 2 or 3 that I went to, they were no better than what you were getting in the regular market, and you didn't really get to kick the tires and do due diligence and things like that. So for the lack of savings or perceived savings versus the risk that you're taking and it being cash, it's not something that I would consult any of my clients to do, unless that's changed over the last 24 months.
Yeah. Gotcha. I'm sorry, go ahead, Terrell.
And I was just say, a lot of those places can be sight unseen too. You can buy this house without stepping in there, and when you get in the house, there might be a tree growing up. That's more for people who do property flips, and they have staffs that can take on risky challenges. But if you're trying to buy a home like that to live in, you're taking a lot of risk, and there's not a lot of reward for it. You're going to have it's definitely going to be a fixer upper, and if you don't have the skilled people to do it, you're going to have to hire people to fix the home up, and that may be more expensive and definitely more of a headache than if you'd have just went with Dwight and looked at some better options that were pre-owned.
Gotcha. Got a couple of other questions here. Rumor, if you have 20% down, you can get a home with bad credit. True or false?
False.
Okay. Other question, do you guys sell commercial? I'm assuming that's towards Dwight.
Yeah, no, I'm a residential specialist. This is just a decision that I've made. I try to stay in one lane. I want to be the best at what I do, and not that I couldn't do it. I'm licensed to do it, but I have a fiduciary duty to really know what I'm doing and at a high level. So I've chosen not to do commercial, but I have people in just about anywhere that I know that do that well as well. So I choose to refer my commercial business out. I'm 100% residential at this stage of my career.
Gotcha. This is for B for Real Girl, says Dwight. My cousin dropped by and listened in for a few minutes. He said you're correct about mindset to buy a house you can afford, and he did just that in January and bought in an affordable area. So, all right, good deal. Also, statement B. Careful, some homes have liens attached, and I believe they're talking about the auction homes.
Correct.
So you have to make sure that you do your research. Otherwise, you may be getting more than what you had bargained for. And also said you have to pay full amount immediately at auctions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, for my clients, the risk doesn't, at this stage of time, home buying, the risk doesn't outweigh the potential savings you might get.
Correct.
Gotcha. Got a couple of minutes left. This show, of course, as always, is going by very fast. So want to hold up for a couple of minutes and see if there are any closing thoughts for each of you. I don't know if there was anything that we were trying to hold on until the end of the show to share. Dwight, Terrell, I'll give you guys the closing thoughts or anything that you would like to share before we close this show out.
Not really. I touched on that homestead. I want to make sure I put that out there. I'm always thinking of topics, and like I said, I just went right up to the wire coming on. One of the things that I'm doing, if some of your clients are really investing, maybe a topic for next time. It's way too deep to deal back on now, but we might look into cost segregation. That's something that me and some of my clients are starting to study and do. We got clients, when we think about mindset, that are looking at real estate totally different, getting these cost segregation studies so you can depreciate homes a lot more rapidly and stuff like that.
What does that mean in layman's terms?
You could depreciate a home a lot quicker, take a lot more in legitimate depreciation than depreciating it over 27 and a half years, which is kind of typical off your taxes. If you do cost segregation studies and depreciate each component of the house individually, you can effectively write off a lot more legally and a lot faster.
And in what cases would you want to do that?
All cases, because it's more better. You pay less taxes. At the end of the day, you're paying a lot of taxes. So that might be a really good topic for a solo topic, and maybe even get an expert in it. I'm no expert in it, but it's something that I'm looking into, and it's something that some of my clients are looking into.
All right, very good. All right, Terrell, any closing thoughts on your end?
Mine is just, now's the time, especially with my people. I want us to look into real estate. We win with real estate. We don't win when we, stay away from real estate. I just really want us to get with an expert and look at what the payment looks like. Look at what you need to do in the near future to get yourself ready. And don't be scared of it. I find that we have a lot of people that, it's like the doctor. I don't go to a doctor because I don't want to know what's wrong with me. They don't want to come see me because they don't want to know they don't want to know what's financially wrong with them. They're embarrassed of that. But you need to be able to go there and let's fix you up and let's get you ready to buy a home.
Yeah. So what he said in a more catchier way is, stop self-diagnosing. Let us
right.
Let one of us tell you no. Stop telling
That's
yourself no. Let one of us tell you.
I always tell my clients, I've never said no. I say when.
There you go.
All right, guys. Well, hey, it has been a great show. We are right at the end of the show. I want to thank, of course, both of you for joining us this evening. We, of course, have you guys back quarterly just to kind of talk about what's going on in the market. And, of course, as always, we appreciate you. We appreciate our guests and our listeners for asking such great questions. And, of course, I know that you guys are going to have a great year. So, folks, that's it. Until next week, we want to thank you for joining us. Share this information with someone who you think will see some value and or who needs this information. And of course, join us next Wednesday because, of course, if it is Wednesday night, it is Black Men Speak. Good night, everyone.